The sun was hiding behind dark clouds, casting a heavy shadow over the city. The streets were silent, but in the silence, fear whispered in every corner. People moved quickly, glancing over their shoulders, hearts pounding like drums in the night. Among them, a man known as the Iman walked proudly, his robe flowing behind him as if the wind itself feared to touch him. He had power, authority, and a cruel heart. The Christians in the city had always whispered about his anger, about how he hated them because they loved Jesus. Now, his hatred had grown so deep that he decided he would end their lives, one by one, to show the world that no one could oppose him. In a small, hidden house, a group of Christians gathered quietly, their faces pale but their eyes shining with hope. They knew the Iman had marked them, that death could come for them at any moment. But they also knew something stronger, something unseen but alive. They prayed not with fear, but with courage. Jesus, they whispered, protect us, guide us, let your light shine even in the darkness. Their voices trembled, yet a warmth spread in their hearts, like a small fire that refused to die. Far away, the Iman plotted. He called his soldiers and told them about the Christians, speaking with a voice that cut through the air like a blade. Bring them to me, he commanded. No mercy, no forgiveness. They must pay for their faith. His eyes burned with anger, but in that burning, something strange began to stir, something he could not see. It was as if the sky itself was listening, and the clouds above him whispered secrets he could not hear. The Christians did not know how or when, but they felt the presence of something greater. A deep peace filled their hearts, stronger than fear, stronger than pain. It was as if someone invisible was standing beside them, holding their hands, telling them that no harm could touch them beyond what was allowed by a power far higher than any man's cruelty. And so they waited, hearts trembling but full of faith, praying not for themselves, but for the one who hated them, the Iman, so blind in anger that he could not see the truth. The day of judgment came suddenly. The Iman gathered his soldiers and marched toward the small house, confident that the Christians would not survive. The sun tried to break through the clouds, but the sky was thick with darkness. As they approached, a sudden wind rose, cold and fierce, carrying whispers that no soldier could understand. The Iman laughed at the wind, mocking it as mere air, and yet something deep inside him stirred uneasily. When the soldiers forced the door open, the Christians stood calm, their faces shining like the morning sun. They did not fight, they did not scream, they only prayed, their voices rising in a melody that seemed to pierce the darkness itself. And then it happened. Flames of light, brighter than fire, surrounded the Christians, not burning them but protecting them. The Iman froze, his eyes wide in disbelief. The power he thought he commanded, the power he trusted to destroy, turned against him in a way he could not understand. Smoke and fire filled the air, but not in the way the Iman expected. He felt a heat in his heart, a burning that was not from the sun, not from any weapon, but from the judgment of God itself. His knees trembled. His soldiers ran, screaming in terror as the impossible unfolded before them. The Iman's power was nothing. His plans were ashes, and above the chaos, a voice whispered, calm but unshakable, a voice that carried the weight of eternity, no one who harms my children shall go unpunished. The Christians looked on, tears in their eyes, not for themselves, but for the man who had chosen hatred over love. And in that moment, the city held its breath, watching as the proud Iman, once so certain of his power, faced the fire of justice and the mercy of God, all at once. The city was silent after the chaos, but the silence was heavy, like the pause before a storm breaks again. Smoke lingered in the streets, curling around broken doors and shattered windows. People peeked from behind walls, terrified yet unable to look away. They had seen something impossible, something that would be whispered for generations. The Christians had been untouched by flames that should have destroyed them. And the Iman, the man who commanded fear, had vanished in a fire that no human could have started. The Iman was not dead, but he was changed. He lay in the ruins of what had been his grand palace, his robes scorched, his pride shattered. He tried to stand, but the heat in his body burned from the inside out. His mind raced with confusion and terror. How could this happen? How could a few helpless people withstand the power he had controlled all his life? And why? He wondered in desperation, was he the one suffering now? As he crawled through the ashes, the Iman remembered the Christians' faces, the calm, unwavering faces that had stared back at him even as his soldiers roared in fury. He remembered their voices, singing prayers he could not understand, voices so full of peace that they cut through the fear in his heart. For the first time, the Iman felt something he had never felt: doubt, fear, and, strangely, shame. He had believed his power was absolute, that hatred and threats could bend the world to his will. But now, everything was undone, and he was powerless. The Christians, meanwhile, were gathering outside their small house. Their faces glowed not from fire, but from hope, from a joy deeper than any human trouble could destroy. They whispered to one another about what had happened, their voices trembling but full of awe. "Jesus saved us," they said. "He did not let one hair on our heads be harmed." And yet, even as they celebrated, they prayed for the Iman, not for revenge, but for mercy. "Lord," they said, "open his eyes. Let him see your love before it is too late." Back in the ruins, the Iman tried to rise again. His body ached, his skin burned, and his mind was filled with voices, voices not of men, but of something greater. Whispers of truth, of justice, of a power he could never control. Each step he took felt heavier than the last. The city's streets seemed endless, and with every turn, he saw reminders of what he had tried to destroy. Homes that should have been broken were whole. Gardens that should have been scorched bloomed with life. And always, always, the Christians watched, calm and fearless, their faith like a shield he could not pierce. In his anger and despair, the Iman finally spoke, shouting into the wind. "Who are you? Show yourself. I am the master here. I command the earth and fire." But the wind carried no answer he could understand. Instead, the sky opened just a little, and a single beam of light touched him, not to destroy, but to reveal. His eyes stung with tears as he saw visions, visions of his cruelty, the lives he had sought to end, the fear he had spread. And then, among the visions, he saw the Christians, praying not for vengeance, not for harm, but for his heart. It was in that moment the Iman realized something impossible. He had underestimated God's power, and he had underestimated love. Every command he had given to hurt others had only created chains around his own soul. Every plan of cruelty had become a path to his own destruction. The fire that had spared the Christians now seemed to follow him, not to kill, but to teach. It burned away his pride, his hatred, his illusion of control, leaving only the raw truth no one could stand against. God's justice and mercy at the same time. The Christians approached cautiously, sensing that the Iman was still alive, yet changed. They did not mock him. They did not accuse him. They offered him something far more powerful: forgiveness. "You have been blind," one whispered. "But it is not too late. Open your heart. Let him in." The Iman fell to his knees, trembling, feeling the weight of every sin he had committed, and for the first time, he prayed, not to destroy, but to be saved. And in that prayer, a new chapter began, not just for him, but for the city, for the Christians, and for everyone who witnessed the impossible that day. The Iman had never felt such fear in his life. He trembled on the cold stone streets, every step heavy with shame, every breath a reminder of his cruelty. His robes were blackened with ashes, but the fire in his heart was fiercer than anything he had ever known, not a fire of power or pride, but a fire of truth and judgment. He had commanded armies, controlled towns, and terrified people with his words. But now, he was small, weak, and utterly alone. The city around him was silent, yet the silence roared louder than any drum. The Christians, still glowing with peace and joy, watched him carefully. They did not rush to punish him, nor did they turn away in fear. They understood something he could not yet see, that the greatest power in the universe was not fear, not hatred, not armies, but mercy. They approached slowly, hands open in welcome, voices soft yet firm. "You have seen the truth," one said. "You have seen what your hate has caused. But it is not too late. You can change. You can be free." The Iman shook his head violently. "Change. Free. I am the master here. I am the one who commands. Who do you think you are, telling me to change? I have power. I have armies. I have authority." His voice was hoarse, trembling with a mix of fear and anger. But the Christians did not step back. They did not flinch. They held their ground, their eyes shining like stars in the dark night, a calm that pierced his heart like a sword. Then, it happened. The fire that had spared them, that had terrified him, began to move. It rose from the ground like living flames, not to consume, but to illuminate. The fire circled the Iman, surrounding him, showing him visions of his life, every cruel order, every act of hatred, every lie he had believed about power and respect. He saw families broken, children weeping, friends betrayed. And at the center of it all, he saw Jesus, calm and loving, standing among the Christians, untouched, smiling at them, and finally turning his gaze to the Iman. The Iman fell to his knees, screaming into the air. Why me? Why am I the one burning? I am the master. I am the ruler. I am the one they should fear. But the fire whispered back, not in words he could understand, but in a truth he could feel deep in his soul. You feared them, you hated them, and yet you feared me the least. You chose your pride over mercy. Now you must learn. The Christians knelt around him, holding hands, praying not for vengeance but for his heart. Lord, they whispered together, open his eyes. Let him see your truth. Let him know your love before it is too late. The Iman felt a strange warmth begin to push against the fire, a light that penetrated his darkness, a calm he could not resist. Tears streamed down his face, burning, not with shame alone, but with the first taste of hope he had ever known. Hours passed, or perhaps only moments, the Iman could not tell. Time itself seemed to bend in the presence of the fire and the prayers. His mind, once so full of schemes and control, emptied. His heart, once cold and hard, began to crack. He saw clearly for the first time that power without mercy was empty, and that cruelty would always consume the cruel. And as he saw this truth, the fire around him began to change. It no longer tormented him but cleansed him, washing away pride, anger, and fear, leaving only his soul, raw and trembling, yet alive. Then came the final test. A voice, deep and calm, filled the air around the city. Will you turn from your hatred? Will you choose mercy over cruelty? Will you follow me? The Iman's knees hit the ground harder. His voice was barely a whisper. Yes, yes, I will, I want to be free. And in that moment, the fire surged one last time, not to destroy, but to lift. Flames danced around him and then vanished, leaving him on the ground, alive, unburned, but forever changed. The Christians wept as they helped him rise. They had seen hatred meet justice, cruelty meet mercy, and the impossible unfold. The Iman's eyes, once cold and proud, now shone with tears of repentance. For the first time, he felt true fear, not fear of men, not fear of armies, but fear of living without God, of being cut off from his love. And yet, even in that fear, there was hope, for he had seen the hand of God reach into the darkness and lift him, offering a new life he could never have imagined. The city, too, began to breathe again. The streets no longer held terror. The smoke slowly lifted, revealing homes untouched, gardens blooming, and people emerging from hiding, their hearts filled with awe and wonder. Word spread quickly. The Iman who had brought death and fear had been humbled, and the Christians who had been targeted stood alive, glowing with a light that could not be dimmed. The Iman fell to his knees again, this time in gratitude. I see now, he whispered. I see the truth. I see the mercy I have ignored. I see the love that has saved me even when I sought to destroy it. And the Christians, holding his hands, whispered back, it is never too late. God's love reaches even the darkest hearts. Stand now, and live. The city was awakening, but not as it had before. The streets that had echoed with fear now whispered of miracles. People peeked from behind walls, eyes wide, mouths open in wonder. Word had spread of what had happened. Christians untouched by fire, the Iman brought low, his pride broken, and the air itself alive with the power of God. Whispers of awe ran through the crowds. No one had ever seen anything like it, and yet, in the hearts of the Christians, there was only quiet gratitude. The Iman walked slowly through the ruins of the city, his steps cautious, as if the ground itself might rise up against him. His eyes were no longer full of hatred. Instead, they were wide with humility and fear of what he had faced. He saw the buildings, some scarred by fire, others untouched, and he realized how little of life and power he had truly controlled. He had thought himself a ruler, feared by all, but now he knew the truth. True power belonged to God alone. The Christians gathered around him, offering hands, not to punish, but to guide. You are safe now, One whispered. The fire has passed, and the Lord has given you another chance. Walk with us. Learn from what has happened. Let your heart be changed. The Iman's lips trembled. He wanted to speak, to deny, to claim authority, but all words felt hollow. Only silence, only the trembling of his heart, answered. Then the sky darkened again, but not with threat. A brilliant light pierced through the clouds, bathing the city in golden warmth. The people below gasped. Even the Iman fell to his knees, unable to bear the glory and power that surrounded him. From that light, a voice spoke, calm but unshakable, echoing across every street and home. Let my children live in peace. Let the wicked know that mercy and justice are mine alone. Repent, and be transformed. Refuse, and the fire that consumes the proud will find you. The Iman felt every word like fire in his bones. His heart quaked. He thought of the Christians he had sought to destroy, of the families he had tried to break, of the hatred he had nurtured for years. And now, faced with a power far greater than any he had known, he felt the last shreds of pride fall from him. Tears streamed down his face, hot and cleansing. He had no words. He only bowed his head, praying with a heart he had never known before. Lord, have mercy on me. Save me. Teach me your way. The Christians prayed aloud, their voices weaving together like a tapestry of hope and love. Lord, guide him. Let him see your truth. Let him know your mercy. And as they prayed, the fire that had once tormented the Iman lifted completely, replaced by a warmth that filled every corner of his being. The pride, anger, and cruelty that had burned him away were gone, replaced with awe, humility, and a trembling understanding of God's power. Outside, the people of the city watched. Some fell to their knees in amazement. Some ran to tell others. The miraculous had happened. The Iman, the man who had sought to destroy faith, had been humbled and saved. The Christians, once hunted, now stood as beacons of hope, their light shining brighter than the sun piercing the clouds. And in the midst of it all, the Iman knelt, no longer master of men, but a servant of the living God, trembling yet alive, filled with a fear and love he could barely understand. The city itself seemed to breathe in relief. Gardens bloomed where ashes had fallen. Birds sang as if they knew the world had changed. Even the wind whispered gently, as if carrying the message to every corner. No one who harms God's children will go unpunished, and mercy is offered to all who seek it with a humble heart. The Iman, still on his knees, finally spoke. I see now. All I sought was power, and I destroyed so much. But I understand now. There is a power greater than any human, and I am nothing without it. The Christians nodded, smiling with tears in their eyes. It is never too late, they said. God can reach even the darkest hearts. Stand, and live differently from this day forward. And for the first time, the Iman did rise. His steps were slow, careful, but they were steps of truth. The city watched in awe as the man who had once spread terror now walked humbly, a living testament that God's justice is certain, and God's mercy is boundless. The stage was set for the final chapter. The Iman's heart had been touched, the Christians had been preserved, and the city had witnessed a miracle none would forget. Yet, in the shadows, the echoes of choice and consequence lingered, reminding all that every heart must decide whether to embrace love or fear, mercy or pride, light or darkness. The city had never been so quiet, yet it thrummed with life. People emerged from their hiding places, their eyes wide, their hearts pounding, still unable to fully believe what had happened. Stories spread from one ear to another. Christians had faced certain death, yet had been untouched by fire. The proud Iman, once feared by all, had been humbled, brought low by a power he could never command, a justice he could never escape. And now, he walked among them, not as a ruler, but as a man transformed. The Iman moved slowly through the streets, each step a reminder of the fire that had both destroyed and saved him. He saw the homes that had been threatened, the families that had trembled in fear, and he remembered the cruelty he had commanded. His heart ached with guilt, but for the first time, it also pulsed with hope. He saw the Christians waiting, their faces gentle, their hands extended in forgiveness, their eyes shining with a love he had never known. Lord, the Iman whispered under his breath, tears streaking his face, I am nothing without you. I have lived in pride and hatred, and now I see that I was blind. Teach me, guide me, help me walk in your way. The Christians knelt before him, joining in prayer. Their voices intertwined with his, not in condemnation, but in hope. And in that sacred moment, the fire that had once tormented him no longer burned. It had transformed into a light that filled him from the inside, warming every corner of his soul. The city watched as a miracle unfolded before their eyes. Where there had been fear, there was peace. Where there had been hatred, there was humility. Where there had been destruction, life blossomed. The skies cleared, revealing a brilliant sun, and birds soared above the rooftops, singing in harmony as if rejoicing at the power of mercy and justice. People wept openly, some in relief, some in awe, and some simply in gratitude for the truth they had witnessed. The Iman fell to his knees again, this time not in fear, but in surrender. "I was wrong," he said, his voice trembling. "I was blind. I sought to destroy what I could not control, and in doing so, I was nearly destroyed myself. But you spared me. You showed me mercy when I did not deserve it. Help me live differently. Help me serve, not command. Help me love, not hate." The Christians smiled, offering their hands. "It is never too late to change," one said gently. "God's love can reach even the hardest hearts. Stand, and live in His truth." The Iman rose slowly, his knees weak but his heart strengthened. He looked at the city, at the families, at the children who had once cowered in fear, and he made a silent promise: never again would he rule through fear. Never again would he harm those who sought only to love and live. He had faced fire and judgment, and now he had chosen a new path, a path of humility, faith, and compassion. The Christians, still glowing with the miracle that had saved them, gathered around the Iman. Together, they walked through the streets, showing the people that mercy and justice can exist hand in hand, that even the darkest hearts can be transformed, and that faith can protect and guide those who trust in God. Every step they took was a testament to the power of love, the certainty of divine justice, and the hope that even in the face of cruelty, good can prevail. By nightfall, the city was quiet again, but in a different way. The terror that had once ruled the streets was gone. Fear had been replaced by awe, hatred replaced by hope. The Iman, now humbled and transformed, knelt one last time in the city square, lifting his eyes to the heavens. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice carrying across the silent city. "Thank you for mercy, for patience, for the chance to live anew." And in that moment, the Christians, the people, and even the city itself seemed to breathe in unison, bound together by the miracle they had witnessed, a miracle of faith, courage, and the infinite power of God's love. From that day forward, the Iman's life was no longer his own to rule with pride or cruelty. It was a life given to service, to compassion, and to spreading the truth that had saved him. And the city, once shadowed by fear, shone with the light of faith, hope, and the unshakable knowledge that no one who harms God's children will go unpunished, and that even the hardest hearts can be touched by mercy. Summary: the story follows a proud Iman who orders Christians to be executed. However, God intervenes in a miraculous way, protecting the Christians with divine fire. The Iman faces the consequences of his cruelty, witnessing the power of faith, mercy, and justice. Humbled and transformed, he repents, learns humility, and embraces God's love, while the city witnesses the miracle and the triumph of faith over fear. Moral lesson: hatred and cruelty lead to destruction, but mercy, faith, and love are stronger than any human power. Even the darkest hearts can be changed when touched by divine truth. True courage is standing for what is right, and true strength lies in humility and compassion. The end.